Hi, boys and girls. Today we're going to talk again about telling time. Now, when we look at our clock, we know that there are two kinds of clocks that we can use to tell time. We know that the first one is called a what? Who remembers? Think about it. Starts with an A. It's an analog clock. Okay, so an analog clock. Now, an analog clock, lots of times it's going to be in a circle. It's going to have numbers. Now, when I number my clock, I start with 12 at the top and 6 at the bottom. I go on the side, I put a 3 and I put a 9, and then I put the other numbers in between. Okay. Now, an analog clock is going to usually have at least two hands. And when I look at those hands, I have one that is very long. This is going to help me know the minute. Remember, the minute hand is the hand that moves around the clock more quickly. It tells me the minute of the time. Okay. Our other hand is the hour hand. It is shorter and it moves around the clock more slowly. Now, when we are talking about time, we know that the hands on the clock move around. It starts at the top and it goes around to the right and comes back up and around. It keeps going around over and over, and it moves the second hand is the one that we don't always have on here, but it moves the fastest of all of them. The minute hand moves the next fastest, and the hour hand moves the slowest. Okay. Now, when we talk about time, yesterday we talked about how it has the little dots on it going around. We have 60 dots. Each dot represents a minute. And in 60 minutes is equal to 1 hour. So when the blue hand, which is, and it's not always going to be blue, but on ours it's blue, when it starts at the top, when the minute hand starts at the 12 and it goes all the way around the clock, we know that an hour has passed. An hour has passed. There are 60 minutes in 1 hour. 60 minutes in 1 hour. Now, if I say that we have 30 minutes, we talked about half of something last week, and so we know that it is half of an hour. And it makes sense when you look at the clock. And I know, and I'm going to use this clock here, I know that if this is 3 o'clock, remember, because I'm going to talk about the minute hand, the hour hand first, and the hour hand is pointing to the 3. So I'm going to say 3 o'clock. But if I take this circle and cut it in half, let's say I start here, where am I going to cut it in half? Here. Right? And what happens is when that big hand gets on the 6, notice what's happened with the short hour hand. It is halfway between the 3 and the 4. It's halfway between the 3 and the 4. And so I know, remember we talked yesterday, this is going to be 3:30. 3:30. It is halfway between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock. I would say 3 o'clock, 3:30, 4 o'clock. So it's halfway between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock. Okay. So when I'm telling time, I know my hands are going to move around in a clockwise. That means that's the way a clock moves. It's going to move to the right and go all the way around. 60 minutes in 1 hour. So half of that would be 30 minutes. Remember yesterday we talked about how instead of, because when I look at this clock, I can see these little dots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So instead of having to count it every time, they thought, all right, let's just put this number that I know when it's at 1, it's 5 after. Lots of times people will say that. So when we know how to count by fives, we count by fives a lot. Let's do it together. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. And so I'm going to say it's 30 minutes after 3 or half past 3. Or I can say 3:30. So when I'm writing it, how can I write it? So if I'm going to draw, let me use my markers to do this. If I'm going to draw this, I have to be exact. Just kind of like when we were dividing shapes, we have to be exact with our shapes. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to go all the way down and all the way through the 6 to the edge because I want people to know that's the long minute hand. Then I'm going to draw the short hour hand. When I draw it, I'm going to draw it in between the 3 and 4, and I'm going to stop before I get to either of the numbers because I want people to tell that is the short hour hand. So take your time when you're actually having to draw it. I know right now we're not having to do that, but I want you to be careful when in second grade, you have to do that. All right. So if I was going to write this time, how am I going to write it? I can, first of all, on a digital clock, remember it has 2 dots in the middle. So if I'm going to draw this time or write this time, I'm going to say the hour is 3 and then the number it's on 30. When I read it, I will say 3:30. 3:30. I can also say half past 3. Okay. I can also say 30 minutes past 3. And I can say 3 o'clock if I want to. 30 minutes past 3 o'clock. So lots of ways that we can write it. Lots of ways that we can write this time. So let's practice just a couple and see what times we can have. So if I have this time here, what time is it? What are we going to say? The hour first, 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock. So when it comes down here, we already did that when I went the wrong way, sorry. So if it's at the bottom, we're going to say, when I look, remember the hands go this way. So it's not to the 5 yet. It is in between the 4 and 5. I always come back. So it's 4:30 or half past 4. Okay, let's do another one. So this time is what? 7 o'clock, right? So then when it comes here, it's halfway between the 7 and the 8. Notice the hands go this way. So this is not even to the 8 yet. It is in between the 7 and 8. I always fall back. So it's going to be what? 7:30. Notice it's right on the 6. This is halfway between the 7 and the 8. Let's do another one. What time is this? What is it? 9 o'clock. Say it with me. 9 o'clock. So then when it keeps going, it's halfway between the 9 and the 10. It's going this way, so it's not to the 10. So it's going to be what? 9:30 or half past 9. All right. Everybody have a great day. We'll continue talking about time.